So if you've heard me talk about how to be a productivity ninja, you'll know that unorthodoxy is one of the characteristics of a productivity ninja. And last week I was running a webinar where we were discussing unorthodoxy in practice over with my Think Productive colleague Matthew Brown. Now, one of the questions that came up during that webinar was, what's the most crazy or wacky thing that you've done in the name of unorthodoxy? And I have to admit, I think Matthew's examples were better than mine. But it did get me thinking, why do we always go to the extremes when we think of unorthodoxy? Why do we think that the person who's the most creative or the most innovative is the person who comes up with the craziest idea? Because actually sometimes the simplest of ideas are the most unorthodox. It's amazing how many times I'll run a workshop or give a talk and people come away going, oh my goodness, there are some ideas in there that are so simple. I can't believe I didn't think of it. So sometimes when we're chasing the crazy and the wacky, we forget to notice the things that are simple that would actually be pretty transformative. Let me give you two examples of that. So one example comes from some feedback that we had from the session that we ran last week. I spoke to someone this morning who said the thing that they took away was the idea of scheduling in thinking time. So having some very deliberate moments of thinking in their working day. Because actually, they don't give themselves time to think. And they're not the only ones. The number of people I've spoken to who go, do you know what, I never give myself time to think. And the crazy thing is, we invest years in education, which is all about getting us to think better, getting us to think and to apply our thinking. When we're recruiting, we find out people's knowledge and competency and skills and their capacity to think. We recruit people for their capacity to think. That's what we value in the world of work. And yet, in our current climate of work, thinking time is the easiest thing to squeeze out of your working day. When the pressure is on, when there are emails coming left, right and centre, you've got meetings back to back, actually you could easily go through the day without really giving yourself much thinking time. Example number 2. I've been working recently with a group who've been tasked to look at ways of improving productivity and well-being in their organisation. So as part of their leadership development, they've been looking at putting together a proposal to take to the senior leadership team about ways and initiatives of improving both productivity and well-being in their organisation. And one of the things that they proposed, one of the things that they brought up to their senior leadership team was the fact that as a company, as a company that produces really delicious butter and cheese, they pride themselves on how many hours their cows spend outside, in daylight and in fresh air. And yet, they found out that their factory workers are not allowed to spend time outside. They're not allowed to go outside during their working day. And this moment when they revealed this had their CEO with his head in his hands. He couldn't believe it. He was thinking, what are we doing? That's crazy. The fact that our cows spend time outside and our workers don't. And there was no real reason behind it. It was just a historic thing. Maybe there was a reason to begin with, but it's been something that's been historically done and nobody has challenged it. You see, sometimes unorthodoxy isn't about what crazy thing can I introduce to disrupt the status quo. It's more often unorthodoxy is about challenging the crazy things that we see as completely normal. So that's the challenge I'd like to invite you to join me in this week. What aspect of your life or your work could benefit from a little bit of unorthodoxy this week? So I'd like to invite you to notice the things that we take for granted, to notice those things that we do just out of habit, just because it's always been done that way. And to ask that question, why do we really do this? And what if it doesn't have to be done this way? What if it could be different? How would it be different? What would be the benefit of that? So I'd like to encourage you to do basically what my kids do and ask that question, why? Why do we do that? I'd love to see and hear what you come up with, where that thinking leads you. So please do feel free to come back to me and let me know how you get on with applying some unorthodoxy and challenging those crazy things that seem normal.